body to uphold our solemn responsibility to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and to protect the nation from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I've long believed that the President's words and actions have undermined our national interests and our values. But yesterday felt different. As someone who has sat for 26 years on the House and Senate Foreign Relations Committee, it was a day of infamy in the history of our foreign policy. Yesterday, the American people witnessed a supplicant president of the United States capitulate to a brutal foreign leader on the world stage. Far from standing up to Putin, President Trump was unable to even acknowledge Russia's attacks in 2016 and the continued threat it poses today. Instead, the president reverted to his own insecurities about his electoral victory and disturbingly subverted the work of the men and women who lead our intelligence community. I shouldn't have to repeat this, but I will. And I hope my colleagues on both sides of the aisle are as unequivocal as well. 17 U.S. intelligence agencies together assessed that Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered a sophisticated influence campaign aimed at the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Yet the president said he had no reason to believe Russia interfered. And I have no reason to believe what he tried to clean up today. Those statements directly contradicted statements from then CIA Director Mike Pompeo, who is now the Secretary of State, the U.S. Vice President Michael Pence, and the Director of U.S. National Intelligence. The president said, and I quote, "I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I'll tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. And what he did is an incredible offer. He offered to have the people working on the case come and work with their investigators with respect to the 12 military intelligence officers that the special counsel indicted. I think that's an incredible offer." Well, the only incredible thing about that offer is that the President of the United States would invite the perpetrator of the crime to help with the investigation. That's incredible. Every time President Trump failed to stand up to Vladimir Putin felt like a collective punch in the gut of the American people. It was disturbing and saddening to see the leader of the free world shrink in the face of a dictator. Just as disturbing is that we have no idea what transpired between President Trump and Putin during their secretive, lengthy meeting. What could the president need to discuss with President Putin for 2 hours with no other advisors present? If President Trump said such appalling things in public, Lord knows what he would have said to Putin in private. And we deserve to know what was said and what was agreed to. We can't afford to be blindsided or outmaneuvered. Just today, the Russian Ministry of Defense publicly stated that it's preparing to start implementing an agreement that the president apparently struck in Helsinki with President Putin, an agreement that neither Congress nor the American people have been informed about. So to adequately protect America's interests, we need to know what commitments you made to Putin. What specific topics did you discuss? What were the suggestions President Putin made to you? Did you discuss any changes to international security agreements, and if so, what were they? Did you advocate for the extradition of the 12 Russian intelligence officers indicted last Friday? Did you make any commitments to the U.S. role regarding Syria? Did you press Russia to return to compliance with the INF Treaty and halt its nuclear threats against Europe? Did you discuss U.S. sanctions on Russia, including CAATSA sanctions that this body passed 98-2? And if so, did you commit to any action? Did you call upon President Putin to withdraw from Crimea and eastern Ukraine so that both areas can be returned to the sovereign government of Ukraine? Or did you ultimately give up on Crimea? Did you discuss NATO military exercises scheduled for this fall? Did you agree to roll back or change the nature of those exercises? Did you discuss U.S. security assistance to Ukraine and make any concessions regarding their continuation? Did you raise the issue of political prisoners with President Putin, including that of Oleg Sentsov, the Ukrainian filmmaker who has been detained for 4 years on a hunger strike? What, if anything, did you commit to? We need to know. Now, the president keeps saying, well, having a good relationship with Russia would be a good thing. Of course, having good relationships with countries in general is a good thing. But those relationships must be grounded in trust, in cooperation, in the values that we share, values like human rights, democracy, self-governance, and individual freedom. We do not share values with a country that attacks our election and by doing so seeks to undermine our democracy. We do not share values with a country that invades its sovereign neighbors and engages in a brutal war in Ukraine. We do not share values with a country that bolsters the butcher of Damascus and is complicit in war crimes in Syria. We do not share values with a country that assassinates political opponents and jails journalists. We do not share values with a country that continuously violates the international order. We do not share values with Russia under Putin. Mr. President, we take oaths when we are sworn into office. President Trump did as well. And yesterday's behavior, from my view, was an abdication of that oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. We've reached a terrible and historic low point in the United States. An American president, it seems, has teamed up with Russian intelligence against our democracy, our FBI, our Justice Department, and our intelligence community. Our president is more closely aligned with Vladimir Putin than he is with his own government. It's unfortunate we've come to expect this behavior. But President Trump has made his fixation on Putin and his affinity for authoritarians crystal clear. And America's weaker because of it. So the question is, are Senate Republicans okay with this? And except for the presiding officer and one or two other colleagues, from the silence of many or the feeble comments of others, I'd say so. Are they willing to concede Russia policy to President Trump? Is the price of letting this president surrender to a brutal dictator in Moscow some corporate tax cuts and a Supreme Court seat? Tweeting about being troubled is shamefully inappropriate. Signing on to symbolic measures that carry no force of law is a joke. And remaining silent in the face of betrayal is nothing less than complicity. It's time that the Republican-led Congress live up to its constitutional responsibilities. If this Senate is to respond appropriately, here's what we must immediately do starting this week. First, the Foreign Relations and my distinguished colleague and ranking Democrat on the Armed Services and Intelligence Committees must hold hearings on what happened in Helsinki. We have a right and a responsibility to know what transpired between Trump and Putin and how it affects American citizens. We have the power to compel the administration to provide that information. We just need to use it. Second, the Senate must protect the Mueller investigation and prevent interference by President Trump. The president's laying a groundwork to fire the special counsel. We can't let that happen. It's our responsibility to protect the integrity of our institutions. Third, the Senate must conduct real oversight of the Russia sanctions that were signed into law last August. And as I have said repeatedly on this floor, the Trump administration is ignoring several mandatory provisions of the law. Mandatory. In all the sanctions that I've helped write, this is one of the first times that the Congress came together and didn't give a president waivers because they were concerned about what he would do vis-a-vis Russia. And look at this. Maybe that foresight was very clairvoyant. I and other Democrats have spoken out. We sent several letters. We continuously urge administration officials to implement the sanctions. Where are the Senate Republicans, including all of those who voted for this bill except for one? Silent. If you want to stand up to Putin, if you want to stand up against Trump's capitulation in Helsinki, then we need to press the administration to finally implement what's already in the law. what's already in the law, and we should do so today. Fourth, we need to protect ourselves here at home, since it's clear that we have a president who will not. The Senate needs to take up and pass the Protecting the Right to Independent and Democratic Elections Act that I introduced last month. There are also measures by Senators Warner and Klobuchar and others that would bolster our electoral defenses. President Trump's intelligence community has repeatedly warned that the Kremlin's dangerous interference in U.S. democracy is continuing. Just days ago, the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats, said that the warning signs are blinking red of further Russian cyber attacks. He noted that we are under literal attack. Yet instead of marshaling a whole-of-government response, President Trump remains fixated on protecting his fragile ego. Mr. President, today is the 4th anniversary of the shooting down of Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 over eastern Ukraine by Russian-supported separatists, which killed all 298 people on board. A devastating reminder of the real dangers of the Kremlin's brutal targeting of civilians and why our relations with Russia have been strained. Yesterday, Putin said the ball's in America's court. Well, it's time we take our shot. It's time we show the American people and the world what it means to put country over party. It's time to show the American people that we can be patriots, not just partisans, that we will stand by our allies and stand up to our adversaries, that we will defend our democracy, our institutions, and the values that truly make America great. Our president has proven too weak, too egotistical, too feckless, or maybe too compromised to do it. It's up to us. With that, I yield the floor.
The senator from Rhode Island.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I and many of my colleagues feared, the Trump-Putin summit was disastrous, and their press conference amounted to a disinformation operation